it's actually interesting that I'm doing this presentation after the panel. I'm going to be touching a lot of the points that were discussed in the panel. Before that, I would like to go back and ask a few basic questions that we keep asking ourselves. So one is, in networks, particularly in mobile networks, for many years we've been trying to figure out from the information from the network, the data coming from the network, how am I performing? How is my customer experience going? And we've developed those metrics that tend to show green. So in average, the network is green. I have an average good coverage. I have an average good performance. But then you slice the melon, you open it, and it's red. So many customers are not happy, and for various reasons. And we've been trying to find different methodologies to try to measure that. There's benchmarkings going on. There's crowdsourcing, trying to measure the network from the outside. However, those are snapshots that we're taking, and still there's an immense amount of data coming from the network. So how do I fix some of the basic questions? And the first question is, how do I know that the investments that are making the network are impacting the customer? Do you know? Well, many people say, give me unlimited budget, and I can solve any problem, every problem. And for many years, if you look at mobile networks, going from one generation to the next generation, invest in the next generation, invest in coverage, invest in capacity. As long as I have enough money, I can make those investments and solve all the problems. Now, things evolved. That unlimited budget is not there anymore. And also, the customer base is changing. Do you know why your customers are churning? This is a big focus in the industry. How do I keep my customers happy, and how I keep my customers in the network? A lot of development investment has been made into the customer channels. So if a customer is complaining, and if he complains a lot, I'm pretty sure he's going to leave the company if I don't solve if going to leave the network, if I'm not going to solve the problems. However, more than 90% of customers, particularly in the consumer space, they don't complain. They just churn. So all of that investment in the customer channels might not be good enough to help you reduce churn. And what have been the major limitations about measuring customer experience? NPS has been a key metric for many years now to try to measure the customer satisfaction and try to address it. However, NPS is not a great measure in terms of understanding when problems occur that create that experience or that feeling from the customer, and doesn't really tell you if it's something that happened with the network itself, or is it the experience when addressing one of the customer channels. Actually, there's good ways of understanding that you can actually have a different NPS on the same network infrastructure. In some countries, you have a huge amount of MVNOs that run on the infrastructure of an MNO. And there's a few examples where those MVNOs have a better NPS than the MNOs they're competing with, and they still use the same infrastructure. Many, as I've mentioned, many unhappy customers just leave, churn, without even saying anything. And then the customer experience varies across the lifetime of the customer. So there may have been different times within the experience of the customer in that particular service where the customer had different feelings for many different reasons. It could be the network, could be something else, or could be that customer is also not happy with the tariff and the value of the tariff that he has. Different customers have a different experience in the network. And that's particularly changing as more applications come into the network, as more people start using the network for a variety of different usage. Not just pure consumer web browsing or doing voice calls, but also using it for business applications. The correlation between the customer experience, the usage profile, and the customer lifetime value is not there. So it's very difficult to achieve that. And it's not measured in real time or over time. As I mentioned, we tend to do snapshots. So how to overcome these limitations? The ideal customer experience measure should take in consideration real-time service quality, so continuous monitoring of the service quality, the health of the network, outages that happen in the network or performance issues that might happen in the network and how those impact the customer experience. Customer usage patterns. As I mentioned, there are different usages, different behaviors of the customer, and this continues to evolve. I might be a customer that today does a lot more browsing on my mobile phone, and then tomorrow I'm doing more video streaming, and I keep changing. Customer journey, where I'm coming from, where I'm heading, again, that's constant change. And qualitative data, so those measures that we're collecting, NPS is good as an input, surveys, benchmarks, all of that should come together. So we need to bring those measures together and get to a metric that really helps understand what's the experience, and then use that metric to drive our decisions. So this is a busy slide, and this is where analytics and AI comes together. As mentioned before, there's many different data sources that we can tap. Now, there's still a challenge that exists in this industry, which is organizations that own these data sources are still pretty much siloed. So I'll be honest, when we engage with our CSPs, it's not easy to manage to get all of these data sources and start working on that. And that's mainly because it's siloed and teams are just focused on a certain number of data sources. But we, as a company, as B-Yond, one of our strongest points is ingesting the data from the network. And data ingestion is a key element. I'll talk a bit more about that. The customer experience index that we put here together is the combination of all of these elements that you see. And that means that we're collecting information from the network, from customer channels, and we are modeling that information so that we can use it to contribute to customer experience index. We are looking at the customer usage and service usage and segmenting that, creating segments of users that keep evolving over time. We're also taking the subscriber profile and look at the value of the subscribers as an element that contributes to customer experience index. We are continuously scoring the quality of experience, scoring churn prediction, and also the customer lifetime value. And we are continuously calibrating. Now, if you try to do this with traditional analytics and build models, this is something that you'll not be able to do or scale. That's where the AI tools come into play. You need to continuously find those patterns that allow you to find those segmentations. By providing continuous continuous calibration, you're going to continuously also change the way you weight the different elements into the customer experience index. And many people ask me, so is this the new metric you can use to benchmark a CSP with another CSP? The answer is no. So this is about measuring the experience within a certain environment, which is continuously changing. Benchmarks are still valid from an outside perspective, but there are still snapshots. And every CSP has a different customer base, has different ambitions. So if you want to become the best network for video streaming, you can focus your customer experience index on that segment. And you can drive all your investments to improve that part of the segment. That doesn't necessarily mean that your competitor is going to do the same thing. So customer experience index is a way of measuring performance within your network and constantly evolve how your customers are performing, and then help you take those decisions. So how to get there? Seems simple, but it's actually quite complex. First one is make customer centricity an organization topic and have the mandate for that. It's still a reality that you have the business side, where people focus more on the customers and tariffs and promotions and the customer channels. And then you have the network organizations. And there's still a disconnect between the two. You talk to the business, they have no clue what's happening on the network. You talk to the network, there's no clue on what's happening on the business. You talk to the radio people, they see the radio metrics, but they don't know if those radio metrics mean anything for the customer. And there's nothing in the organization or goals or objectives that motivates them to look into that. So it needs to be an organization-wide mandate. Identify and prepare the data sources. It's still a challenge. The data is there. Much of the data is being now stored, have big data lakes, but the data is not properly labeled, comparable. It needs to be modeled, ingested and modeled. So luckily, the technology evolved to a point that as long as you have enough compute power, and you can use new technologies, cloud-native applications, you can scale, you can process it in memory, you can ingest that data. But you cannot just take all of that data and then apply it to the AI algorithms. You need to select the elements of the data which are relevant to what you want to do. I heard many people saying, yeah, you cannot model the data, you cannot select attributes because you're making the system biased. Yes, we are, but we need to start solving this problem piece by piece. So we need to start finding those elements that are valuable, and then you can add more attributes as long as you have the compute power to do it, and you validate and you verify that that new attribute contributes positively to the outcome. So how do you do that? This is where the network subject matter experts and the AI data scientists need to come together. They cannot be in isolation. It cannot be throw something to the AI specialists, and they will just choose a random algorithm, try to come out with an output, but then do not have the view if that output is a valid output. So it's a teamwork, and it's a new world having those data scientists talking to the subject matter experts and starting to work together. Invest in AI platforms, no brainer. So we're here talking about AI, but this is the reality. AI platforms doesn't mean that you have one AI black box which is going to solve the problems. AI platforms bring the technology, the frameworks, but you still need to cooperate between what the business wants, what AI algorithms are available, what the data scientists can do with it, and make sure that you have the right outcome. Use dynamic modeling methods to measure and aggregate multiple metrics. That's what I showed you before. And this is a big change in the telco space. Everything is very static. You have those thresholds well-defined, you have those KPIs well-defined, and everything is based on that. You reach a threshold, you take an action. Now, those thresholds are going to constantly change. Your users are going to be changing. Your network is going to be changing even more. And the more new applications come into the network, and now we have IoT, which is even non-human-based type of applications coming to the network, that's going to have an impact, and it's going to be constantly changing the performance of the network and the experience of all those different applications. And continuous calibrate. So AI is not an independent set of tools. It needs to be always work in conjunction with human validation and calibration. Also to make sure that the customer experience and the index is as accurate as possible, but also that the insights that you provide and the recommendations that you provide out of that are valuable for the business. So I'll skip this one pretty quickly. This is kind of pretty basic in terms of what we should be doing from a customer centricity decision making. What we advocate as B-Yond is that not only the marketing decisions need to be based on customer experience, but also the network decisions need to start being more focused on customer experience. Some of the projects that we've been working with our customers go across a variety of different problems they're trying to solve. One which we see that is picking up momentum nowadays is the trend to move from a network operations center to a service operations center. Now, interesting enough, the motivation is still cost. So we're trying to be more effective and more cost effective. We see that this should be actually a priority from a customer centricity perspective. And what we're doing there is, and this is where we're using Customer Experience Index massively, is comparing the Customer Experience Index to the alarms and to the performance metrics that we get from the network, determine the root causes of that performance degradation, and providing recommendations of what you can solve, where you can invest that have a higher impact on the customer experience. On the other side, when we talk about enterprise business, it's not so much customer experience from an application performance perspective, but it's more from an SLA management perspective. Enterprises sign off a contract and they have certain SLAs. They want to measure those SLAs. And the CSP also wants to understand, can they fulfill those SLAs? So using AI to predict if I get a new customer with this type of applications on my network and with this SLA, is it going to work? And then over time, measure that, predict if that SLA is going to be met, and provide recommendations on how to improve the network in order to keep that SLA without even breaching it. But we're also using, again, information from the network to provide recommendations in terms of where to upsell and cross-sell. So once we start understanding more the type of customers, the usage, and the experience, there's other applications, other tariffs, other products that you can recommend to your customers. And finally, bring Customer Experience Index into your investments. So there's a lot of companies out there providing you tools that can use AI to predict where you should be investing capacity and coverage based on usage. But it doesn't really tell you what is the value of the customers in those particular locations. Many years ago, I was still working for one of the major CSPs in Europe, and I was confronted by the finance team where they came to me and they told me, you need to shut down 1,000 sites because they are not profitable. And I told them, are you crazy? I cannot shut down sites because it's going to affect my coverage and capacity. They said, yeah, but it only has a handful of customers. We measured, and it's not profitable. And this was the first time that I started thinking about, they may be right. We're making those investments in areas where we're not going to get a return on investment. And other places of the network, we have customers which are not happy, we're valuable customers, and that's actually where we should be making those investments. So, in short, Customer Experience Index. We have a booth outside, so feel free to drop by and ask us how we can help you achieving it.